Are you a business owner looking to grow your business in South Africa? Tune in to the Blaze podcast with Telkom Business. Learn from the experts and get tips on marketing, finance, innovation, and more. Blaze with Telkom Business.
Welcome to the Telkom Business Blaze podcast season 2. I'm your host, Mashudu Modau. For those of you who are new to the podcast, this is where we provide small and medium enterprises with the right insights, tips, and strategies to help you thrive in today's dynamic business landscape. In today's episode, we talk about what it actually takes to build a successful business in a highly competitive industry. So get ready to ignite your business potential with Telkom Business Blaze. Today we have some really inspiring guests, and I'm really excited to introduce you to them. Thembalethu Msibi, founder and creative partner. Wandile Collis, founder and strategy partner. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Can we start with just, what inspired you to start this business?
We really wanted to create an environment where the strategy is as important as the creative. We find that in our industry, the product, which is the creative portion, kind of happens to take center stage. And we had a deep appreciation for what Wandile does, which is strategy development, and what I do, creative development. And we wanted to create a place where those two could live comfortably, be celebrated, and deliver excellently, continuously, whatever the challenge is. And we wanted to get some of our time back, which we haven't. It feels like we now have to give a bit more time. But yeah, we'd worked together for years on different clients and at different agencies, in different verticals, even from sponsorship to your classic through the line advertising and below the line. And we wanted to create a home for people that wanted to do the same, and to be able to just participate in the industry in a different form.
Wandile, what does day one look like?
Sure, it's quite scary. I think what's interesting about day one is that it doesn't feel like day one. I think it's quite interesting how people usually get into business, right? It's either out of necessity, out of a purpose or a passion. And sometimes you get into business because you got a passion for something, and you don't realize that it is day one. So you just keep going, and then, you realize then it's day 100, and then it hits you that, oh my goodness, you are in business, and now you are responsible for 5 people's salary, which is quite scary. And so forth and so forth. And then next thing you realize that, you are responsible for 20 people's, income. And that's where it really gets frightening. But day one, whether you realize it's day one or not, it's exciting, but also it's frightening as well, because, talking about starting a business is easier said than done. When you get into it, then you realize all the other challenges. You might be passionate about a certain thing. So we're passionate about marketing and advertising. But then when you are running a business, you realize that there's so much more into running a business. Now you must worry about taxes, about paying the internet,
Yes.
Where you're going to work, the office, the equipment that you're going to need. Where day one, when it's just the two of us, we really are mostly driven by passion and a desire to just change the status quo of the industry.
You mentioned the industry that you guys are in. What is the landscape and complexities of that industry that you're competing in?
Sure. Wow. Our industry, which is the marketing world, the advertising world, is quite a small industry, but it is dominated by a lot of big players. So within the South African landscape, you have a lot of advertising agencies, sponsorship agencies, activation agencies that are, backed by a lot of big global powers, who then give them kind of deep pockets to, run smoothly, versus a small business that's trying to get into the whole industry. The other complexity is that some of those big industry or big global giants that are funding these advertising or creative agencies come with certain contracts. So for example, one brand might be globally aligned. So throughout the whole of Africa or the world, they use a certain global power. That global power then comes into South Africa and then just gives those particular contracts to those agencies that are aligned with. So it becomes complex for a small entity such as ourselves to try and break into the market, first of all. Whilst it is easy, the barrier to entry is easy. You need a laptop, you need a great partner, and you need to be quite creative in order to get going. But then once you get into it, you realize the complexities of just how challenging your competitive set is. You compete from anybody. You even compete with technology. Canva can make a poster, right? And then on the other hand, you then competing with other small agencies or one-on-one individuals that are breaking into the market, trying to make pamphlets, trying to make, communication. And then you've got the global entities that employ 300 people, but you're all vying for the same account. So it becomes tricky in terms of your competitive set being quite broad. So sometimes you get the challenges of how you price yourself, because you don't want to fall into the trap of underpricing or overpricing, because then you get locked out of the game. So that's another complexity that comes in.
And I think creativity has changed over the years, right? You get content creators these days, and brands can work exclusively with them. You don't necessarily have to have the massive professional organization with it. They don't have to, run through the hoops of creating and developing strategies. They just need a really great idea that resonates with the brand. So the competitive landscape has kind of also shifted beyond just your traditional muscles that Wandile is talking about, but also the ability for anybody, anyway, with internet and a computer to create, and people can respond to brands. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, but there's value in it, and it's important that we consider that as part of what makes up our industry these days.
And also on that level, I think some of the global entities, when they come into the market, what makes it interesting is that they bring in a lot of kind of global studies or global tools that then they use to empower those agencies that are aligned to them. Whereas when you're a startup, you're on your own. Right, you have to look at your own funding models. You have to look at your own remuneration, how you're costing, and you almost feel like you're in the wild west. We always laugh. We always laugh at each other. It's like you never know if you're going to be courting a client, for example, presenting a proposal. You never know if you're underpaying or undercosting, or you're doing the complete opposite. So we don't have a standardized kind of costing model. Sometimes when you buy a big piece of machinery, it costs what it costs. Whereas for us, when you're in this very complex environment, somebody can charge 5 Rand and somebody can charge 5 million Rands. And so that becomes quite complex in terms of where do you peg yourself as a startup.
Thinking of yourselves as a startup, are there strategies that you guys have used to face these challenges that you've mentioned? Is there sort of ethos that governs how you behave, how you operate, so that you can think differently to these organizations that might have different backing and investment?
I think the first thing, Themba and I always talk about how we consider ourselves, we are a startup, but we are also not a startup. What we mean by that is that we've got 20 years plus tenure working for the big agencies, from sponsorship agencies to advertising agencies, etc. So we've got the experience, right? But what makes our offering a bit different is that we still function as a startup. And that's quite important as one of a great strategy that we feel sets us apart and enables us to take on the bigger players. That's the first thing. And also we strive not to be, so we didn't wake up and say we want to create the best advertising or marketing agency in the world. We are of the view that we're trying to create the advertising agency or marketing agency that the world needs. And that keeps us in check, because being the best, you go down a very different path, right? You're driven by ego, you're driven by just numbers, right? And being an advertising agency or marketing agency that we feel should be the best for the world that we live in keeps us in check. It means we've got to be good. to our clients. We've got to be good to the people that we partner with. We have to be good to the people that work for us and with us. It keeps us in line, so that whilst it keeps you balanced to say, there's humanity brought into kind of what we do as well.
Yeah.
So,
That feeds into this question, and maybe you grab this, is, the way entrepreneurs think about customer service or customer relationships is very different from, maybe someone who's more employee-centric or mindset.
Yeah.
How do you guys think about your approach to marketing and client relationships because of your entrepreneurial mindset?
Deeply interested. I think that really is one of the things that drive Wandile and I, and it's something that we try to imbue in the people that we work with, right? Because when you are deeply interested, you become deeply invested. And the client success is our success, and we have an understanding of what that means and what it takes. If we are fortunate enough to work on Telkom Business. If Telkom Business doesn't win, we don't win, and we understand that quite implicitly. And as entrepreneurs, we also understand the commercials, right, and the importance of that. So it's about understanding that our role and our part, even though it is just about delivering marketing product, it has an influence on the success of the organization, its share price, its ability to grow, its ability to be of impact. And when we talk about impact, something that we do try to redefine inside Black Swan. So that it can stand for something that is quite personal to Wandile and I as Black women, and to have that spirit of part of that into the organization and into the culture. But in essence, it is about being deeply interested and invested, so that the commercial benefits can, kind of show for the clients, as well as for the agency itself and the people that we work with.
Yeah, and Themba's underplaying that. I think at the end of the day is, if we are deeply invested in our client success, I mean, most people will say that, that's what they do in business. But when you're an entrepreneur, you take it quite personally when your client doesn't win, right? If you make a campaign and it doesn't move the needle and nobody's buying the product, you take it quite personally because it's like, oh wow, we didn't move the needle. So I think being entrepreneurs gives us the spirit of really understanding what it means for our clients when they don't win, because we feel it as well. And so that keeps us on check as well, to make sure that sometimes we don't just deliver pretty pictures, but we deliver pictures or campaigns.
Hardworking pictures.
That bring in that moolah.
Just speaking on clients, you have a deep investment in them winning. And is that part of what makes up the strategy for growing your client base as well? How do you communicate to them the value that you have to offer that helps them understand that you are the right choice?
Sure. We've been fortunate, Mashudu, that we've got a good reputation, bless. And some of our clients have actually been through word of mouth, or it's people that we've worked with previously that have moved to other organizations, and they give us a call. And they ask us to show up, and we show up well, and we get cemented. And it's important that we maintain that. And one can say it's a strategy or it's just a behavior, right? In that when whatever task we're given, we take it as the most important and, most critical, if one may. And I think that's something that we try to do. Everything is serious. We take, I'm passionate about everything. Wandile is passionate about everything. We get in there, and it's important to be like that every day on every single thing, whether it's a simple poster, whether it is a short-term strategy. All of it matters.
Yeah, let me explain that a little bit. So in our industry, it's very difficult to move accounts. So for example, if I'm trying to poach a new client, it's very difficult to move a new client, right? Because they're tied into contracts, like in any other industry. They've signed a contract with another advertising agency for a year, 3 years. So it's quite difficult to move a client. So Themba and I are of the understanding that when you get it shot, you better use that shot, right? So whether it is a big campaign or it is a small social campaign, you better show up, and you better show up big, and you better do it well, because you are only as good as your last campaign. And so we use that as a strategy to say, whatever shot, no matter how small that shot is, we get with any client, right? We are gonna hit it out the ballpark.
When we get a seat at the table, we are not leaving. That's really like it. If we get invited, whether we just have to sit at the back, we're sitting at the back like with excellence, and we kind of do that.
And so in a which is interesting, right? In a world where, as I said, the industry is small, but it's dominated by a number of big players, right? The notion of being trusted to deliver, the notion of when clients say their word is bond, we take that very seriously. That is beyond any marketing campaign, which is ironic because we are in marketing, right? So we understand just the need to just deliver and deliver excellently and deliver with pride.
What trends do you see specifically in the industry you guys are in that is shaping the future of marketing, particularly from an agency perspective?
Well, there are a few. I'll start with kind of I think where most entrepreneurs who are trying to vie for big business will go. I think procurement has shaped the industry as well. I'll start with that, and then we'll talk about AI, which is something that obviously is shaping a lot of industries, whether it's marketing or manufacturing or etc. So on the procurement level, I think what it's done to the industry is that sometimes it has leveled the playing field, right? Because in the past, big clients only wanted big agencies. And now what procurement is doing is trying to say, well, it's good to have big agencies, but it's also good to have the local flavor, the local nuances. So, procurement and even some bold marketing clients also asking to say, wait a minute, I just don't want to work with big agencies only. I actually want to bring in kind of the local expertise, people who understand my customers in a better way. So I think in that level, that has changed the industry. It's enabled small businesses in our industry to actually have a seat at bigger tables and to be able to have relationships with bigger clients that in the past, you wouldn't be able to fill that tick box because you're only 5 years old, for example. And then and Themba can talk more about AI, because AI is also one of those where everybody's still trying to get their heads around, but it's something that you can't ignore. And my view is that AI is an enabler. It's like that movie with Iron Man. Tony Stark is Tony Stark, and he's amazing and he's funny, but when he puts on that suit, he becomes invincible. He gets extraordinary powers. He's able to do other things that he can't do. So in our view, that's how we see AI. We don't see it as a negative. We see it as something that we are embracing, whether it is data analytics, whether it is automation, whether it is other tools, because AI is a whole complex world. But we are starting to embrace it because it has certain benefits for what we do.
I think that's, I want to add to that. I think what is kind of, articulated that quite well around that's a massive conversation. I think I can come back to the, surgence of social into it, and everybody can make an ad. You sometimes see the Nando's ads that make the rounds, and you look at it like when you're a professional, you go, no, Nando's didn't make that. But customers can take brands into their own hands and make stuff. I mentioned it earlier around, you can find social creators that can go to clients. I think also what has happened in the industry is that budgets aren't necessarily allocated to your classical advertising. So you can find a massive sponsorship opportunity that becomes what the brand stands for and what moves the brand forward, right? And tactical opportunities, and then it shifts where the budgets are going. So you've got to constantly be aware of what is happening for your brand, what's happening in the industry in which the brands that you work with or the companies that you work with operate in, so that you're able to respond a bit faster, and a bit and the deep understanding of the strategic direction will also influence how things can happen. Because just because we have planned to shoot a TV ad in 3 months' time, something incredible happens that is tactical and requires a completely different shift of the landscape and what the brand needs to do. And that budget's going to be allocated differently. And as agency partners, we've got to be able to continuously adapt and be able to facilitate some of those conversations with our clients so that you don't find that other people can, leapfrog your client and yourself as an agency. So
yeah. And also kind of AI, the way I see back to AI, is that it's also going to be the great enabler, but also the great leveler, right? So I think the way it's going to shape particularly our industry is that, 20 years ago, large agencies had to employ 300 people. And right now, I think what AI is going to do, it's going to shrink the sizes of agencies, unfortunately, for human capital. But it's going to allow the really great creative people to focus on creative work. Because sometimes you can automate some other stuff so that you can focus on the really important things that actually move the needle. So that does excite us, but it will kind of shift kind of the agency makeup, who you employ. Because if you think about it, we're not in manufacturing, so we don't spend millions getting equipment from China to, to install in a plant. But people are our biggest capital. And so we will continue to invest in people because no matter how empowered AI makes you in terms of being quicker to deliver, looking for information, AI's heart has never been broken. Right, AI can write that love story or that powerful movie, can give you a basic script, but the emotion that you bring, that humanity that you bring, that is people. So we understand that whilst AI will change the nature of agencies, but what it will do, it will allow the really creative agencies and creative people to really rise, to really dig deep and tap into that human thing that we all have in order to sell products, in order to make better movies, in order to make better music, so that you just, because as I said, AI's heart's never been broken, so they can't write that love story, right?
Which is a good thing.
It's a good thing. But yeah, and I think that's how it's going to. So I think the really great creative will rise to the challenge. And those that are hiding and kind of doing mediocre, the machines will take over. But it's quite an exciting world, I think, going forward.
It's good armor. That's how we have to think about it, because it'll make the marketers better.
Yeah, it will.
Because the intelligence and the analytics, etc., will come into their world as well. But to Wandile's point, it'll also make the creative a bit sharper. So it's something to look forward to and something to embrace and where to just, level up.
I think you guys have done an amazing job at just laying the land of what the industry that you guys are in and what it takes to compete in it as well. I just want to shift gears a bit and speak to who you are as entrepreneurs, right? And I think, back to AI not having its heart broken, I think AI also hasn't had to face failure. It's never had to face challenges. It's never had to adapt who it is for the life that it's chosen. How has being an entrepreneur changed you or influenced you as a person?
Sure. That is a loaded
It makes being rejected easier. People can't break your heart. I think it makes you resilient, right? Because, like you said, failure happens, but you've got to be able to recover. And it's important to be able to recover quickly and recover with learning. So you fail forward, to use the cliche. And that has had an influence in how we've built Black Swan, in how we've built the people that work around Black Swan, because when you put a wonderful idea in front of a client and they go, you've got to be able to pick it up and say, I'm sorry, my baby. You did now, and come up with something else, because you're not always on the same page with the people that you sit across. The world shifts, things change, the objectives change, ambitions change. So it's important to be able to be resilient, to recover, and to build relationships that enable that. right? I think that's another thing that changes once you start leading your own organization, or start leading teams and being the person accountable. It is about being able to go, we can argue about the idea and not about each other, because we need to come back to the same table and rebuild what we have, what we're trying to achieve. So even if someone says this is the most stupid thing I've ever seen in my life, you've got to, take it personally, but not let it break you. So that you can come back tomorrow and rebuild, or start afresh, just like wipe the table and bring something quite clean. So Wandile talks about herself as a polymath, and I really always love that, right? And it's something that we try to build on, because it is about being able to just understand things very quickly. It's a really important thing to learn quickly. Because once you can learn quickly, you can execute quickly.
And make better decisions.
And that's something that we do try to deploy.
Yeah, so how it's changed me is, first, as Themba said, the resilience thing is, I call it the bounce back.
Yes.
Because you're going to fall, my bro. You're going to fall down, and you're going to fall a lot of times. So your bounce back is important. So I'm braver because I believe that my bounce back is God's skill, right?
Yeah.
And it's something that you got to constantly work on. How it's also changed me as a woman. I think women are much more, we got confidence, right? So we start businesses and stuff, but, sometimes if, for example, a big tender comes out, a woman-run agency is more likely to go, I don't think my agency is strong enough to win that particular thing.
Yeah.
But so what the entrepreneurship has done for us is that it's made us really believe that we can be powerhouses, right? And be okay with that label, because sometimes we shy away from going, okay, maybe we are good.
I like how you whispered.
Maybe we're not so bad at this thing, right? But
She'll text me.
Yeah. But that inner belief and that confidence to go, actually, we can be powerhouses, because our male counterparts are better at that. They are able to write press releases about certain things and really shout and go, look, I've won this contract. Whereas we'll take a whole month to go, did we just land that? And take it in. But so as an entrepreneur, the journey, it's made me bolder. It's made me embrace certain labels like powerhouse, like you guys are good, and it doesn't feel like an imposter syndrome. And it's also made us, ironically, because our industry is also male-dominated, it's made us much more attuned to our femaleness, right? We're much more empathetic. We give people a chance, and we allow people to be human, because as I said earlier on, is that we're trying to not build the exact same model as other agencies. We're trying to build an agency that is best for the world right now. So if we've got a guy who his wife gave birth, and the HR lady said, well, he's only entitled for 3 days paternity leave, and we're like, take 15, take 10, because we're empathetic to that humanness, right? And again, because we don't buy huge equipment to do the work, it's humans that give us the best creative output in our campaigns. So we have to be good to our people. So it's about balancing kind of the ego that comes with your masculinity, but also embracing the femininity and the softness that comes with being a woman in a dominated world, and be okay with that.
And trying to create something different, right? Which can have its own faults, and because it doesn't always fit into the system, doesn't always fit into the process, also doesn't get things to run in the most efficient way, but to try things and to break the rules sometimes, because some of those rules exist in the context of, the government says you get 10 days paternity leave, but what does that do for family structures? That's important. What's an aunt in the Black sense? Is it, your mother's sister? Is it your cousin? etc. So to be able to redefine those things that don't necessarily exist in the context of the law, in the context of the industry, for Black Swan, for us as women in owning and running this business, to be able to define that and change that and make a mark differently.
Yeah. Would you say some of these things that you've mentioned are how, running a woman-led business and, a founder-led business makes you, it influences the operations itself, how you think about culture as well. How else have you seen, examples of this show up in the business itself? But also, how does that influence, the way you guys think about growth as well?
So I'll give you an example. So you're absolutely right. It does influence the operations. So for example, things like paternity leave, things like when somebody dies. Themba mentioned, who's an uncle. So if your uncle dies in other corporates, it's like, well, is it really your uncle? But for us, how many uncles do you have? it's like umalume, so we'll give you the time off to go grieve. So there's certain nuances that allow us to shape that, because as I said, we don't want to create that rigid model. We want to create a human-centric element, and that is the vision, because it works for our clients. Our people bring their best because they want to work for us. We don't, so that's the one thing. Also, this notion of believing in partnerships. Our vision is we are a female-owned entity that started with nothing. So we value other small businesses. So when we are creating events or creating campaigns, and we have to think about who's doing the catering, who is doing the lighting, who's doing the driving, we think of other small businesses, because we need to make sure that as a small business, as we were empowered, we're empowering others. We always leave room for failure. So sometimes we hire some misfits that don't, but because that's, we want to bring in a much more diverse,
We become empathetic, right? Which can also have its own faults. When it talks about, you can hire some faults because someone comes with like, they've not been working for the last 6 months, they're retrenched somewhere, and you go, shame, man, imagine not working for 6 months, give them a chance. And sometimes you soon find out why, right? And then and it's about being able to course correct even when stuff like that happens. But I think being women has had its faults as well, because we can overinvest in trust,
and we've been burnt.
So it's about finding that balance. I think has been important for us, because we can be powerhouses that are not destructive. It's quite important that we are of good impact. And being Black women also, you get judged in a pool, right? It goes, if we mess this up, it's going to have an impact on the market that was appointed us, because it's about, okay, maybe we actually do need big agencies only. Maybe we do need global agencies because, their failure standards are not as bad. So that the ticket to the game is so much more important and so much more valuable, because we are so afraid to fail, because it has an impact on
a ripple effect.
An impact on the group, which can be unfair, one could say, right? But it does, and it's the truth of how most industries work, that if we get a shot at the table, then we're going to get more people that look like us at the table. You're going to get more small businesses onto the table. You're going to get more Black women at the table, because we're gonna enforce that trust. But there've been people before us that have laid that runway, and we can just continue.
So just to change pace again, let's talk about Telkom Business.
Yay.
Possible begins here. How did that come about?
Sure. So our journey with Telkom Business is quite an interesting one. When we talk about people that gave us a shot, I think Telkom Business is a quintessential brand and client that gave us our first big shot. So I don't know if people listening know YEP, for example, which is a digital platform, but that was our first shot. There was a tender, an open tender, and we said, we put our hands up to say, we can design this thing, we can change the way Yellow Pages look so that it looks like Yep. And we went in there full on, on a panel, and we went against some big hitters. And Telkom Business gave us a shot. They were like, you guys are small, in comparison to who else was kind of pitching for that work. But they gave us a shot and believed in us. So when you say Possible begins here, I get a little emotional, I guess, because it's been long coming. We've had an interesting journey, but from a strategy point of view, it took us a year to do the strategy behind Possible begins here, because we had to do workshops, we had to do internal stakeholder management, we had to do research, we had to go back into the history of Telkom. What's Telkom? What do they want? Where are they going? Telkom Business. What drives Telkom Business? So it was a year in the making in terms of a strategy point of view. And then we just, we based on the history and the desires of Telkom Business and where they want to go, this notion of possibilities, like seeing that particular brand as just an open source of possibilities based on the old days and what the brand has done through Yep, through the internet, through broadband. I think for us,
and where it wants to go.
And where it wants to go in the future, I think Possible begins here from a strategy point of view, was exciting for us, and that's where it comes from. It comes from the past, present, and potentially where the brand wants to go. But it also comes from like this deep-seated place that represents South Africa, right? If you think about, South Africa is about possibilities, if you think of just our own journeys, you grow up, your grandfather didn't have a car, now you're living in a mansion, so the possibilities of change.
But do you have a car?
Sometimes. Sometimes. But the possibilities, I think, is great. And I think Telkom Business represents that. The fact that when you have that SIM card, when you have that data, when you have the internet that Telkom gives you, the possibilities are endless, my friend. And they begin right here. So that's kind of the thinking behind it. It's about recognizing that with the power of what Telkom Business gives you, and what you have inside of you, you can make magic happen. And that was the thinking behind the strategy. And then I'll let Themba talk about kind of like the creative part of that.
Yeah, I think like it would be so good just to hear about the creative process of developing something so powerful.
Yeah. Oh my God, it was hard. It was daunting at times. Telkom is such a big brand. It is one of South Africa's most beloved brands. And when people think about Telkom, there's a very specific narrative. There's also a very specific commercial that people think about, right? Everyone thinks of Molo Mhlobo Wam. You ask young people, you ask old people, it's like, Telkom, Molo Mhlobo Wam. And it's hard to beat that.
Yeah.
And what we wanted to do was to not try to beat that, but just move it along.
Yeah.
And offer the next chapter, because that story will always be part of Telkom and what people understand about Telkom. So we had to create a piece that would land the new story, the new chapter of Telkom, to Wandile's point, to invite the next wave, right? The next wave in people, the next wave in technology, the next wave in what Telkom Business and Telkom Group can stand for. And Possible begins here was the right tagline. When we first presented it, it just landed. It was like, the room was like, that's the one, which hardly happens, right?
Yeah.
It takes you months of reverts and run-throughs to get to the right thing. And from that, having, a stamp of approval on what we actually want to stand for as Telkom, as Possible begins here, then we started building the creative around it. And what you'll see in all of the work, it's always the cusp of greatness. It's always the cusp of magic, the start of something special, something new. And that's the invitation for everybody to design their new, for businesses to design their new, for entrepreneurs to design their next chapter, their next story, for customers to find a new way to communicate, to connect, and for Telkom as well as their sponsorship journey continues. There's a massive focus on women, on women's sports, and women in technology, etc. So everything is about creating new worlds, creating this open source of possibilities to Wandile's strategic direction. So in creating the work, we obviously also work with various partners, right? There's different experts that sit in the development of how we come across, and it takes great PR, great digital partners. The retail experience is also part of it, and it's going to start showing up in all of those spaces and start, to land for South Africans. What we mean by possible begins here.
Yeah. But I think Mashudu also asked you about the creative process, and she's being quite nice about it. But there was a lot of long nights and long tears, annoyed people, lots of caffeine, lots of wine sometimes, because sometimes you need to, de-stress and go, what is it that we're going? But the creative process is always interesting for me as a strategist when I see my creative counterparts, is that they go into a direction, they fight, they spar, it's like a dance. And then they land on something, and then the next day when you see it, they've chiseled it. So it's like these continuous small improvements every single day. Yeah, and that for me is an exciting creative process. And then when you've landed on a great idea is when people around the table can all then brainstorm off it. What if we did this? What if we did that? So for me, seeing that creative process in the team was inspiring as well. It made me want to write some couple of love songs, but
we let you write some headlines.
I did some things, but yeah. So the creative process for me is always magical to see, and it's not linear. Hey, sometimes you have a good day, and ideas come, and sometimes you need to call it and go, hey, I need a glass of wine because today was one of those days. Because it's the mind, right? The creative
and it's the responsibility, right? You've got to be able to recover, because sometimes you can spend 2 days working on something, and then someone goes on YouTube and they're like, ta-da, done 3 years ago, and you cry and you get over it, and then you start again. So part of it has been, loops of changes and drawings and
start from the beginning, go back,
feeling really strong about something, and then waking up and going, not so great. And then inviting others along as well.
What are the challenges that you face in bringing a vision like this to life and a campaign like this to life? But also, how do you measure the success of something like Possible begins here?
I think it's Themba also mentioned it. It's daunting. Right, so the challenge is, I think in the last 20 years, Telkom has had 2 payoff lines, two slogans. The one was Touch Tomorrow, and the other one was Tomorrow Starts Today. So already, if you're looking at history, that's the challenge, is how do you beat those words? Because in those words, there was so much meaning and so much kind of excitement. So that was the first challenge in terms of kind of like Possible begins here. But what was interesting is that when we landed on just those 3 words, because those 3 words need to summarize what Telkom Business stands for, what Telkom Business is going, and it has to be short, it has to be punchy. And when the team landed on it, I think I got goosebumps. I felt it in my gut, right? And then when they presented it to Telkom Business and the marketing team, there was silence in the room. And that's always a good indication, because sometimes to land on those 3 words, just do it, Possible begins here, it takes you months, right? And sometimes you go back and you fight. But when there was consensus in the room and everybody felt it and it felt right, I think that was the first win. And then, of course, then you're on the right path. And then when we launched it, I think our peers in the industry, when they send you the text to say, I just saw that thing, I saw Possible begins here, then you're on the right track. And obviously the challenge with slogans is that, they need time to land in markets.
And to be embraced.
To be embraced. You need to keep working at it. Every single campaign needs to demonstrate what Telkom Business is saying about Possible begins here? Do the products that they sell say Possible begins here? You know, do they, who they sponsor, where they're going, do they say Possible begins here? All of those are mini tests in which you can start seeing the power of those 3 words, and that's exciting. Yeah.
So I think the measurement is going to be how well it translates into beyond it being just a slogan. I think that's going to be critical to it, right? And obviously how South Africans respond, remember it, love it, appreciate it, start to feed it back. Because when people experience it in the retail environment, when people experience it in activations, etc., or in products, to Wandile's point, then when it feeds back, I do feel that Possible begins here. It's going to be one of the things. As marketers, we also judge ourselves by, awards. We like to be celebrated. So that's also going to be one of the measures, right? Yeah. Are we going to win some stuff on a local and global stage from effectivity, even and creativity as well, and how we can scale it is also going to be important.
Yeah. Look, if the measure of success is whether or not you had inspired the next generation of builders. Let's just tick that off, right? Like you think about just the possibilities that are, opened up for young entrepreneurs who access technology through Telkom Business and are able to, start or build things that they really care about. It really just like, it opens so many doors, and like the future looks so much bigger, brighter, and so much more beautiful as well. So I think that's already a powerful thing. Stunning. Just to end things off with, and I think this is mainly just so entrepreneurs and small businesses can learn from the expertise that they might not be able to afford just yet from your amazing agency. What current marketing trends or tactics are you most excited about or feel are very relevant for small business owners to start implementing in their own businesses and thinking, very future focused in how they speak to their customers, speak about their products, and also start to really open up the possibilities for their own growth?
I would say it's reassessing the currency, right? And by that, I'm talking to your own worth as a business person and what you can give and what you can get back from others, right? And it's being able to build the right partnerships. So your currency as a business person is your experience, it's your passion, and what you bring to the table. So when you bring others along, it can form like a great ecosystem. So the ability to partner with others is really critical in delivering any product, whether you are a plumber, whether you are a digital expert, or anything. It's like find other people that are doing stuff that will make your thing better. The currency exchange doesn't have to be monetary. It's the right skills, being able to get together and create something special and create something that can be of value and of commercial success, right? Everybody wants that, but it's not sitting inside your head too much, and not being afraid to fail and not being afraid to ask for help, even from people you don't know. I think the world has opened up so much, right? You can find a really incredible developer in like Kenya. Right? Don't be afraid to DM someone. The DMs are open for work. Ask for help, get the right people in, change what you think you know, and be open to learn. So I think for me that, and I'm not not really like a marketing tactic. I think it's a strategy to deploy, and it's something to think about.
No man's an island. No business. No man or woman is an island, and no business is an island as well. You need other businesses. And on that note, I think for me, as a critical thing of any small business or medium business, you've got to embrace technology and embrace all things that are digital and are linked to connectivity. We are all connected. And so if you don't have big budgets to give us a call. Or maybe we take small budgets too. But when you embrace things like digital platforms, and I'm talking from your basics, social media platforms, to things like Yep from Telkom Business, to that world will help you unlock. So in the past, you were an island. If you had a great product and nobody knew about it, you would have to make pamphlets. Now, all you need is a phone and some clever words, and you can sell your products to all corners of South Africa. Yeah. You can promote yourself using these digital profiles. You can find other partners on these digital platforms that can make your ideas stronger, go faster, go better. So if you don't embrace in that world, you're going to get left behind. Yeah. So sometimes it is scary for other people, because how does it all work? How do I market myself on these platforms? How do I get the right partners? But you just have to start. So embrace technology, get connected. I think without being a connected business in terms of the internet, broadband, how fast you can do, if you don't embrace that world, you're not going to get far. So if that's the only thing that you do, I think, is just embrace the digital world and the digital platforms that can enable your business to just day by day just grow and promote yourself on the one hand. But also the digital world, also you're not going to be alone. You've got access to information, access to courses, access to podcasts, right, that give you those nuggets, that make you braver, that give you the how-tos, the do's, the don'ts, the try this, the read up on this, that inspire you when you're feeling down. But also just give you a plug into some great tax people, because they're also running a business, right? So I think embrace it in that way, in terms of marketing your products and marketing your services, but also in terms of empowering yourself. Just be a sponge and learn and embrace it all. And that is how you can circumvent yourself and really blaze new trails. Yeah.
Thank you so much for not only being inspiring, but teaching and empowering. I hope a lot of people have learned a lot, not just about your industry, but the passion that you guys have for the work that you do. It shines in the way that you guys speak about these things as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mashudu.
Thank you.
It's been an insightful conversation today, diving into the world of marketing and entrepreneurship. As we wrap up, we hope that you've been inspired by the incredible work that Black Swan is doing and the innovative ways that they are shaping the future of marketing. Remember, at Telkom Business, we believe that possible begins here. I'm Mashudu Modau, and until next time, stay inspired and keep blazing your trail.